Leo, fierce heart of the zodiac, this is not just another horoscope. This is your soul's moment of reckoning. There is a death approaching, not the end of your physical life, but a sacred ending of who you once were. A spiritual death that will make space for a shocking financial blessing, a new self, a truer path, and a destiny too powerful to delay any longer. If you found your way to this video, know this, it's not random. You didn't scroll here by chance. You've been called. Summoned, in fact, by a force larger than your logic, by the rhythm of your spirit that is finally ready to rise. And so I ask you now, what part of you is dying to be seen? What belief, what pattern, what version of yourself must end for the real you to begin? Your soul has known for weeks. Maybe you felt the restlessness, the weight in your chest, the urge to escape your routine, the dreams that carry messages too vivid to ignore. And now, the universe has led you here. Not to scare you, not to control you, but to awaken you. This moment is sacred. Because when death and money approach at the same time, you are entering a vortex of extreme transformation. Most people fear it. But you, Leo, you were born to lead through it. In just a few moments, I will share with you the cards I've seen, the signs the cosmos is screaming through your chart, and the decisions that will shape not just your month, but the next 7 years of your soul's evolution. You'll understand why things have been falling apart, what's truly behind the recent delays and doubts, and the exact energy you must align with to unlock the financial blessing that's been circling your field for months. But before we go deeper, let me pause to offer my deepest gratitude for your presence here. Every like, every comment, every share you offer is not just a click, it's an energetic commitment to your own expansion. Your engagement helps this message reach others who are also silently awakening, and it fuels this space we're building together, here at Eternal Mindfulness. If you feel something stirring inside you, a quiet knowing, a sense that this message was meant for you, I invite you to anchor your presence right now. In the comments, type, "I am ready for the truth. I welcome the blessing. I release what no longer serves me." Let it be your signal to the universe. Let it be your contract with your higher self. And I promise you, you'll want to stay with me until the very last second of this reading. What the universe is revealing today is nothing short of transformational. It's bold. It's personal. And yes, it may just be the thing that changes your entire path. Now tell me, Leo, what called you here today? There is a quiet kind of dying that doesn't begin with illness or end with a final breath. It begins in the moments when you silence yourself to avoid conflict, when you offer your light in places that refuse to reflect it back, when you shrink in the presence of comfort disguised as control. And in that slow erosion of your truth, something inside you begins to disappear. Not your body, but your brilliance. Not your life, but your vitality. This is what we mean when we speak of soul death, a withering of the parts of you that were born to burn, dimmed by the unconscious agreement to stay small. When the tower appears in a reading, it rarely whispers. It comes to shake what you've built on foundations that no longer serve your growth. But when it appears alongside death and the Ten of Swords, as it does here for you, it suggests something deeper than disruption. It reveals that what's falling apart is not simply external, it's internal. A persona, a performance, a pattern you've outgrown. Something within you is collapsing, and though the fall may feel devastating, it is sacred in its necessity. There is something very human about resisting that collapse. We are wired to protect what we know, even when it has become a prison. We mistake stillness for safety, familiarity for freedom. But safety without selfhood is a subtle form of suffering. You may have told yourself, "I'm choosing peace," when really, what you chose was silence. You may have said, "I'm being the bigger person," when what you truly did was abandon your own needs. And little by little, your inner fire began to flicker, as though it no longer believed you would protect it. In energetic terms, this often shows up in the heart and throat chakras, the very centers of authentic feeling and expression. You may feel pressure in your chest, tightness in your throat, or the strange sensation that you're holding back words that want to rise but never quite reach the surface. These are not just physical experiences. They are signals. Your body is speaking the language your soul has been whispering all along. I cannot thrive where I'm not allowed to be real. And then there is the presence of someone who claims to love you, perhaps even genuinely does, but whose love is laced with unspoken expectations, emotional debts, or quiet manipulation. These are the people who wrap you in affection while subtly steering your choices. The ones who reward you when you stay in line and withdraw when you reclaim your power. This, too, is a death, a soft one, a quiet one. The kind that doesn't show up on the outside until the inside has gone numb. The kind that convinces you this is normal. That love is supposed to cost you your voice. But what if it isn't? What if love, real, expansive, luminous love, begins with you choosing to breathe freely again? To speak even when your voice shakes. To say no without apology. To stand without shrinking. What if resurrection doesn't require anything more dramatic than the simple decision to stop dimming yourself for the comfort of others? There is an old teaching that says, each time you betray yourself for the sake of peace, you do not avoid suffering, you delay it. The pain does not vanish, it waits. It gathers, quietly, beneath the surface, until one day the tower arrives, not just as metaphor, but as circumstance. A job collapses. A relationship cracks. A truth can no longer be buried. And you are forced to feel everything you have long avoided. But here's the beauty, you don't need to wait for collapse to reclaim yourself. You can choose now, gently, powerfully, patiently, to let the version of you that needs external validation die. To let go of the need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. To open the door to your own voice, your own rhythm, your own rising. And in doing so, you don't just prevent the soul death. You ignite the soul fire. Not all endings are tragic. Some are invitations. Some are the very beginning of your return to life. Sometimes, the body speaks what the heart is too tired to say. When your back aches for no reason, when your sleep feels fractured and restless, when your chest tightens in the middle of silence and your throat burns with unspoken truths, these are not just isolated symptoms. They are the quiet, persistent language of a system under pressure. And if you felt these things, dear Leo, it is not because something is wrong with you. It's because something inside you is begging to be heard. You've just come through the awareness that a part of you, a version that no longer serves you, is dissolving. That recognition is not just spiritual, it's cellular. Your body stores memory. Your nervous system responds to energy before thought can name it. The tension in your shoulders, It could be a habit from years of carrying others' expectations. The racing heart? A signal that your body has grown tired of pretending it's fine when it's not. The burning throat? Perhaps the residue of too many words swallowed for the sake of keeping peace. From an astrological perspective, the current placements of Pluto and Saturn pressing into your 6th and 8th houses activate themes of purification and transformation not just emotionally, but physically. These houses govern the daily rituals that shape our health and the deep undercurrents of change we often try to resist. When the Sun, your ruling planet, is caught in this configuration, the message is clear: something must shift, or the body will continue to bear the weight of your silence. We often think of transformation as a process of doing more, but this kind of shift is not about striving. It's about noticing. The way you breathe when no one is watching. The way your jaw tenses when you feel misunderstood. The moments when you eat to numb rather than nourish. When the body asks for rest and you offer caffeine instead. These are the tiny crossroads where burnout is born. And no amount of pushing will heal what you've refused to feel. That's why one of the simplest and most powerful practices you can do right now is to begin your day with just 3 minutes of mindfulness. No performance. No goal. Just presence. Sit quietly. Let your breath arrive like a friend. Place a hand over your heart, another on your belly, and let your system know, I'm listening now. That 3-minute moment of stillness is not a delay from life, it is life. It is how you reclaim your body as a space of truth, not tension. You can also begin to shift the energetic weight through color, not just visually, but internally. Leo, your element is fire. You thrive in radiance. Begin to reintroduce vibrant colors into your meals: golden turmeric, orange carrots, sun-drenched bell peppers. These aren't just nutrients, they're reminders. Each bite is an invitation for your inner flame to return. For your cells to remember that they are meant to glow, not just function. At night, before sleep, try a visualization of golden light. See it pooling in your chest and expanding toward your throat, 2 regions that carry so much of your personal truth and identity. Let the light move slowly, like warm honey, loosening knots, dissolving old stories, restoring breath where there has been bracing. This practice doesn't need to be long. It only needs to be real. There is a quiet teaching from ancient wisdom that reminds us, the body is not something we own or control, it's a garden we tend. And when we stop tending, the weeds of worry, fatigue, and suppression begin to grow wild. But when we return, when we listen with kindness and respond with care, the body doesn't punish us. It softens. It exhales. It heals. You don't need to fix everything today. You only need to begin treating your body not as a battleground, but as your oldest ally. Listen to it as you would a loyal friend who's stayed quiet for too long. What's it been trying to tell you? And what would happen truly if you finally said, I hear you now? Sometimes what glitters the most is the very thing that blinds us. And Leo, you know better than anyone how intoxicating it can be when something or someone promises to finally give you the recognition you've long deserved. A lucrative opportunity, a seductive connection, a deal that looks perfect on paper. But in the silence behind that glitter, there is always a question waiting: at what cost? This is the moment where clarity becomes more valuable than charm. Where discernment outshines desire. Because when the devil appears in a reading alongside the Lovers reversed and the Two of Pentacles, it's not just a warning, it's a mirror. These cards are not about external enemies. They reflect internal contracts, the ones we make in secret. The subtle ways we trade our peace for approval. Our voice for belonging. Our values for validation. And it often happens quietly. At first, it feels exciting, the offer is urgent, the timing seems divine, the payoff looks just right. But urgency itself can be a signal. When something demands you to decide before you've had time to breathe, it's rarely wisdom speaking. Often, it's fear of missing out, fear of not being chosen, fear of being left behind. And fear has a way of dressing up as destiny when we haven't yet learned how to sit still in our worth. This is why many teachings speak of the middle path. Not the one that avoids risk entirely, but the one that knows how to pause at the crossroads and ask, is this expansion or escape? The Two of Pentacles invites you to evaluate not just what you're choosing, but from where you're choosing it. Are you choosing from your grounded center or from your longing to prove something? From your abundance or your ache? The Lovers reversed often appears when we're disconnected from our own inner compass. When the decision we're about to make looks beautiful, but something in our gut quietly recoils. And while the outer world may praise you for saying yes, only you know if that yes is true. You may feel torn between what feels secure and what feels aligned. Between the old narrative of, I should take this now before it disappears, and the quiet knowing that the right opportunity will never require you to abandon yourself to receive it. In moments like these, action is not always about movement, it's about alignment. And sometimes the most radical choice is to wait until the answer comes not from anxiety, but from awareness. There's an ancient saying, when the fruit is ripe, it falls on its own. You don't need to climb, stretch, or scramble. You simply need to trust the timing of your ripening. When you choose correctly, not perfectly, but consciously, you create flow. Not the kind that appears in a moment and vanishes in the next, but a sustainable, soul-aligned current. This is the type of financial blessing that does not just bring you more, but teaches you how to receive more without losing yourself in the process. On the other hand, choosing from scarcity or confusion can place you in cycles that repeat for years, disguised as different faces, different deals, same emptiness. This moment, then, is not a test of ambition. It is a reflection of truth. What you choose now will echo far beyond today. But you are not being asked to be perfect. Only to be present. Only to slow down enough to feel what's real beneath the noise. To ask yourself, does this path lead me deeper into myself, or farther away? There is a kind of power that comes when you choose yourself over the promise of approval. When you recognize that wealth is not measured in numbers, but in how freely you can move through your life with peace, with integrity, with joy that isn't borrowed from someone else's applause. That is the wealth worth waiting for. That is the decision that changes everything. There's a current that lives beneath all form of flow, not just of money, but of vitality, creativity, and meaning. You may have called it luck in the past, or timing, or chance. But it's more than that. It's the subtle alignment between what you believe you deserve and what the universe is ready to deliver. This is what we mean when we talk about the return of soul-level abundance. Not a transaction, not a windfall, but a remembrance of your worth, your rhythm, and your ability to receive without shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's story. The reason this flow was blocked before has little to do with fate and everything to do with patterns. The old you, the one who needed to be liked, the one who accepted crumbs while calling it enough, the one who dimmed your voice in rooms that only applauded conformity, that version made unspoken agreements. Agreements to delay your own becoming for the sake of peace. Agreements to trade authenticity for temporary belonging. And when those agreements were in place, life responded accordingly. Opportunities paused. Resources thinned. Energy slowed. Not as punishment, but as feedback. The system was simply reflecting what you were signaling: I'll wait. I'll shrink. I'll settle. But something has shifted. And the tarot confirms this with three powerful archetypes: the Ace of Pentacles, the Wheel of Fortune, and the Star. The Ace arrives when a new seed of value is ready to be planted, but only in ground that has been cleared. The wheel spins when your timeline is about to accelerate, and the Star reminds you that the source of light has always been inside you, waiting for you to stop searching outside. These cards are not random. They're reflections of what becomes possible when you begin to choose yourself not with ego, but with devotion. To activate this shift, we don't need to chase. We recalibrate. Begin by writing your soul declaration, not a wish list, not a dream board caption, but a living sentence that declares to your body, your mind, and your field: I am light. I am worthy of free and flowing abundance. You don't need to believe it fully yet. You only need to write it as an offering to the self that is ready to rise. Then take a step further. Create a vision map of the life that feels most aligned with who you are becoming. Not who you were told to be. Not who you feel pressured to be. But who you remember you are when you are silent, honest, and free. Let the images, words, and intentions on that board be less about goals and more about frequency. Ask yourself, does this reflect my truth, or just my fear of being left behind? And finally, examine your boundaries around value, especially financial. It's time to ask, who have I allowed to access my energy, my talents, my resources, without honoring their true worth? Because money, like energy, follows attention. And attention is a sacred currency. When you give freely to those who deplete you, your field registers a message of depletion. But when you pause, discern, and choose to reserve your power for places that mirror back your value, the universe responds in kind. Flow returns. Opportunities open. Not because you forced them, but because you stopped leaking your light where it wasn't being seen. There's a quiet truth in all of this. That what you're truly receiving now isn't just money, it's momentum. It's the return of belief in your path. It's the reawakening of your ability to walk into a room without needing to prove your brilliance, because your presence already carries it. And this kind of wealth, the inner kind, is the one that lasts, the one that compounds over time, the one that can never be taken from you once claimed. So claim it. Without apology. Without delay. Not for the world, but for yourself. Because that is when life begins to flow again. Patterns rarely begin with us, but they often end with us if we're willing to see them. And Leo, if you've noticed cycles repeating in your life, giving too much and receiving too little, finding love that feels like sacrifice, achieving success only to watch it slip through your fingers, know this: these patterns are not failures. They are echoes. Echoes of choices made long before you ever arrived, carried forward through blood, memory, and silence. What you're experiencing may not even be fully yours, but it is yours to interrupt. The Hierophant reversed, the Six of Cups, and the moon speak to this with haunting clarity. The Hierophant in its upright form stands for tradition, order, inherited wisdom. But reversed, it challenges those very systems, especially the ones we've followed blindly, believing they were sacred simply because they were familiar. The Six of Cups brings the past to the surface, not as nostalgia, but as an invitation to look again, to notice what was buried beneath kindness, sacrifice, and compliance. And the moon, with its mist and shifting shadows, whispers of illusions we've mistaken for truths, especially the ones we've inherited. You may come from a lineage where survival required silence, where women learned to dim their desires to preserve the peace, where tenderness was given, but rarely returned. And over time, these lessons, spoken or unspoken, became your starting point. Be strong. Don't need too much. Don't shine too brightly. You didn't invent these ideas. You absorbed them. And they've been shaping your choices ever since. But here's the radical truth: what has been passed down can be released. Not with anger. Not with blame. But with a kind of fierce compassion that says, "This ends with me." And that declaration, quiet, clear, rooted in love, carries more healing than decades of repetition ever could. When you write a letter to your ancestors, not to ask for answers, but to offer your understanding, your grief, your clarity, you do what they could not. You name the pain instead of carrying it. You acknowledge the cost of survival and choose something more: freedom. There's something deeply powerful about the act of burning that letter. Watching the smoke rise is more than symbolism. It's a release. A signal to your nervous system, to your subconscious, to your cells that you are no longer available for the contracts that kept you small. You're not betraying your family by doing this. You're honoring them by evolving beyond what they had the tools to heal. This evolution continues as you begin to reclaim your feminine energy, not in the way culture markets it, but in the way your body remembers it. Softness without apology. Rest without guilt. Beauty not as performance, but as reverence. When you nourish yourself, when you speak to yourself kindly, when you wear something beautiful not to be seen but to feel sacred, you rewrite the code. You shift the family legacy from endurance to embodiment. There is an old insight that says, what you do not transform, you transmit. Without awareness, we pass on what we have not healed to our children, to our lovers, to our work. But with presence, with intention, with a willingness to turn toward what hurts instead of away, we become the threshold. The doorway through which something new can enter this lineage. Something softer. Something braver. Something free. This is not about fixing the past. It's about freeing the future. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who will walk in your footsteps. You don't need to carry it anymore. You just need to choose, gently and firmly, to let it go. And in that moment, the cycle ends. Not with a battle, but with a breath. ChatGPT NOI. If you've made it here, Leo, then you already know deep down that something must change. Not tomorrow. Not when the timing is perfect. But now. This entire journey has been a mirror, a sacred unveiling of everything within you that is ready to be reclaimed. You've seen how the patterns of silence, sacrifice, and shrinking have drained the fire from your chest. You've recognized the invitations to rise, and you've begun to understand the price of waiting too long to listen. And still, this moment before you isn't about urgency, it's about awakening. Because you were never meant to follow. You were born to lead not others, necessarily, but yourself. To lead your choices. To lead your energy. To lead your healing. And right now, the universe is not demanding that you change everything overnight. It is asking for one honest step forward. One decision made in truth. One breath that says, I will no longer abandon myself just to be accepted. If you don't answer this call, the cycles will continue. Not because you're cursed, but because life repeats what we do not rewrite. That is the quiet form of soul death we spoke of earlier, the fading of your light not by external forces, but by internal inaction. But the miracle is this: you are not powerless. You never were. You've simply been waiting for permission, when all along you were the only one who could grant it. So today, choose yourself. Not as a rebellion, but as a return. Take the small steps that make big waves. Rewrite the beliefs that tell you your worth is conditional. Rethink the relationships where you constantly trade your peace for proximity. Sit down with your finances and ask, what would it look like to build wealth from my values instead of my fear? This isn't about being perfect. It's about being aligned. Realigned. And if it still feels too big, just ask yourself this: what are you ready to release today in order to step into a future that truly reflects who you are? What habit, what attachment, what version of you is no longer sustainable, no longer sacred? There is no guru coming to save you. There is no timing more divine than this one. There is only your courage, your clarity, and your choice. The rest will follow. Life always meets us at the level of our bravery. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Let this be your declaration. Type it below. I release the past. I choose my true self. Write it not just for the algorithm, but for your alignment. Because your words shape your energy. Your energy shapes your timeline. And your timeline, if chosen with love, can change everything. And if this message found a place in your heart today, if it lit even the smallest spark of remembrance in you, I invite you to stay connected. Like the video. Subscribe to this space. Share it with someone who needs the reminder. Because here, at Eternal Mindfulness, we are not just reading the stars, we are remembering how to embody them. Thank you, truly, for showing up for your own unfolding. The universe sees it. I see it. And somewhere inside, I know you feel it too, that you're not the same person you were when this video began. You're braver now. You're brighter. And you're no longer waiting. You're leading.